Hello, I'm Chris. Welcome to Marine Corner. I hope you're doing well and having a good weekend. This was going to be done yesterday, but as I got towards the end of it, storage ran out of my phone. So, I think this is the third attempt now. So, hopefully we get it done this time. But this is my May wrap up. I read quite a lot of books in May, more than I realised when I started making a list and thinking I've got to go through them now, so it might take a while to go through, but I'm gonna get on with it without further ado. So I finished Coming Alone by Warren Ellis, which was a book. His weekly blogs online that he was writing, and he put them online. About like the comic book industry, and what his thoughts on it, and how it could be improved, how it was working, and how it could be better and stuff like that. It was a really interesting book. It was one I enjoyed. There was also recommendations for albums, novels, and graphic novels, which was really interesting. Some of the albums, I feel like, because I was reading it like one day to the next, I didn't really have time to delve into the albums properly, so it took me, I feel like I want to read it again next year, so then I can read it once a week, listen to the albums for the week, really get into listening to the albums, because music alongside booktube and, well, reading, I meant reading, video games a bit, films a bit. Music's probably my second thing I do the most. So yeah, I definitely want to reread that again. And I think once a week. It's 52 blogs, so it wouldn't take long to read. It'd be quite cool to do that. I also finished Stepan Stew by Charles Bukowski. Now, this was a poetry book and short stories by him. I really like Charles Bukowski. Some stuff I'm not sure about, especially the horse racing stuff is just something I don't have any interest in. I don't gamble, so I don't really understand horse racing at all, and the odds and stuff, and sometimes he goes into that, and some of the stuff he talks about women I don't really like, but overall I do quite like Charles Bukowski as an author, and I'm going to carry on reading him. I've read quite a lot of his stuff, so I'm making my way through the rest. But yeah, I enjoyed that. And then I read a couple of mangas. I got quite a few mangas from the library, but these are the ones I read in May. So I read The Eccentric Doctor of the Moonflower Kingdom by Toru Himuka. This was like a cute romance about a doctor of the flower moon. I'm not quite sure now, because it was early May when I read it, whether, I think there was a girl who was a doctor and she used flowers to heal people from what I remember, but like I say, I'm not really sure now because it was a while since I read it, but I enjoyed it. I'm not sure if I'd carry on with the series. I'm not sure how many volumes it is, because usually I'm not sure whether I would carry on with with a long series. If it's like 10 or 12 volumes, it wouldn't be too bad to read. And then I finished Bleach, Volume 1 by Tite Kubo. I enjoyed Bleach, really enjoyed Bleach. It was a good book. But again, it's like a 74 volume manga series, so I don't think I'd carry on with it just for that reason alone. But I enjoyed the first one and glad I read it. And I think even the anime though is like a long series as well. So either way, I think it's a lot of DVDs or a lot of volumes. So I don't think I'd carry on with either of those. Now let's get on to the novels. So I read Station 11 by Emily St John Mandel. This was an interesting book, like a post-apocalyptic. It was about the Georgia flu, which also gave you vibes of COVID. It was like a guy who, in the start of the book, he dies on stage, and then it kind of goes backwards and forwards with his life, and also it follows a drama group as well that are like travelling across America and doing like dramatizations of Shakespeare. But it was a really good book, and I really like post-apocalyptic or any like post-apocalyptic novels anyway, I should say. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I feel like I'd need to read it again to delve deeper into the story, but I think it's one that I would reread again for that reason. Moving on, the next book I read was The Honjin Murders by Shishi Yokomizo, and I read that. That was like a crime murder mystery. I mean, murder's in the title, so that kind of gives it away, but it's like a locked room mystery, so you don't know how the murderer got in or the murderer got out. So it was a really good book, and I don't want to go too much into it because, you know, it might spoil the story, and I don't think with a murder mystery, the less you know it, the better. After that book, I read The Factory by Hiroko Oyamada. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure. I'm not very good at pronunciations, as you might have noticed. But that's a book from like 3 different people's perspectives. So working in a factory, which is the size of like Disney World or Disneyland. Sorry, Disneyland. And it's how the roles they do, and the people they talk to as well. It's really interesting for that aspect of knowing what goes on and how they feel about the prospective jobs. But yeah, it's quite an interesting book. It was okay. Yeah, it was okay. I'd say it was okay. I enjoyed it, but not enough to think I'll reread it like instantly or sooner. I'd probably reread it eventually, but I think it wouldn't be at the top of the pile. And then I read No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. This was an hard read because the protagonist in the novel basically thinks he's not good enough at all. It's a hard book to read because, I mean, to think you're not good enough at all is bad. It's not good, and especially made worse by if you read about him, how he his personal life, the author, then you kind of feel it. I kind of felt it was a bit what's the word I'm looking for? Autobiographical. So I kind of felt that. But then I really enjoyed it. I couldn't put the book down. And I kind of understand the not feeling good enough. I often feel that. I know I am good enough in some aspects, but I always feel like I don't want to settle and think I'm okay. I want to improve that. So yeah, I do find that quite hard to. I find it. I do relate to that, but also not quite to the depths that the protagonist in the book goes. But it'll be a hard read for you if you choose to read it, or if you have read it, then you understand what I mean. But if you want to read it, then I'd recommend it. But I'm not. I would maybe just go in with a bit of caution about the subject matter. Then I read The Forest of Wool and Steel by Natsu Miyashita. I really enjoyed this book. It was a bit lighter than what I'd been reading. It was about a guy who was in school, I think he was in school. It was basically an education anyway. And there was a guy who come who to look at the piano, and it turned out this guy's a piano tuner, and then he's listening to the piano, and then he decides that's what he wants to do. He wants to be a piano tuner. Excuse me. And then we go on about him, and it goes on through his life, how he then becomes a piano tuner. It was just a really nice, light book. I really enjoyed it. Especially after No Longer Human, it was quite a nice, light read, but an enjoyable read as well. Like a cosy read, I suppose, is the right word I'm looking for. But yeah, it's a book I really enjoyed, and I actually really would like to reread that. Then I read Human Acts by Han Kang. This was a hard book as well. This was difficult. It was quite... There's a few ways I thought it was going to end, and it just never ended like I thought it would, and it was quite sad. It was a sad book, really. It was just... I don't want to go too much into it, because I'm a bit convoluted with where the plot is, how the story went, but I definitely feel like it was a sad book, and I think I'm trying to process my thoughts with it. I think reading it was very, I don't know, it was just very emotional and very sad and forlorn and foreboding, I suppose, as well. It was just a difficult read, but I think I found the same with The Vegetarian that she wrote as well, and I think with those two books I can, with the Human Acts, I definitely I found it hard to read, to be honest with you. It was just so sad. You think, oh, it's going to end like that and it's going to be happy, and it just wasn't. It was just sad, really. I don't know if anyone's read that or not, but yeah, I found it very sad anyway. Then I read Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. Now, I really enjoyed this book. I only read it in a day. It's about a girl. Well, she starts off as a girl, and she does a few obscure things that aren't really normal in society, and then she eventually realizes that she's just going to be like everyone else, and then she finds a convenience store, and then she goes working in that convenience store, and it's basically about her fitting in all the way through the novel and doing what society expects of her. And I don't think you should fit in. I think you should be yourself. But so it's quite hard to think that somebody felt like that enough to just be like everybody else or pretend to be someone she's not. I just couldn't put the book down. It was just an interesting read, and I think Sayaka Murata's a really good writer. But again, I'd take caution with it because it is quite there's quite a lot of depth to it, like with the fitting in and the making sure you're not causing any rupture within society. It's a hard read, I think. I feel like I keep saying hard read, but I feel like these books were hard reads for the subject matters that were involved in them. Then I read Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zorner. Wow. What a book. This was my favourite book of the month. It was heartfelt. It was lovingly written. You can tell that Michelle loved her mother. I wouldn't say she always agreed with her mother on everything, but she loved her mother, and it's basically about her relationship with her mother and her dad, and going through life and then her mum gets cancer, and her mum passes away. I had tears in my eyes reading it. You get to find out more about Korea as well, and the food, which sounds amazing. Some of the food they make. You find out about the culture over there and how they like how families are. I feel like it's different families from different cultures are different, but they all the family rally together to be there for a mum, which is really nice. But yeah, it broke me, and I'd recommend everyone gives it a read. Michelle Zauner is the lead singer of Japanese Breakfast. If you've not listened to them before, I'd check them out. And if you have checked them out and you like them, I would definitely recommend this book. If you don't want to check the music out and you want to read the book, I'd just read the book. I did it, but I'd heard of Japanese Breakfast but hadn't listened to them enough. And I feel like now I need to listen to them more because I really do like them. But I've not listened to them properly since because I just wanted to let the book sit for a while before I then listen to their albums. The first album that Japanese Breakfast did is Psychopomp, which is basically her songs for a mother, basically. The stories that come, the songs that come out of that relationship, and probably before she wrote the book, I think the songs were like, the songs came out of that grief and that sadness, and I think I want to just go for a walk, put that on, and then just let that album sink in at some point. But yeah, I'd recommend Japanese Breakfast, Crying in H Mart. I don't think you can go wrong with either. Then I read What You Are Looking For is in the Library. Now, I've not wrote the author down for this, but this was a Japanese book. This was like my second favourite. Crying in H Mart was my first favourite, but this was a close second. This was a book about different people in different, different, I'm trying to think of the right word, different like places in life, like whether they're retired, whether they're, and living with somebody, or alone, or working, or whatever, or not working. And basically they all end up at this community library. Now there's a junior librarian working there, and they start talking to her, and then she points them to the main librarian in the reference section, and then they're all looking for some books or something, so they all get recommended books, but then they get one book recommended by the librarian. And also this librarian is making these felt items, like whether it be like a plane or a crab or a lobster or whatever it is. I'm not sure if it was a crab or a lobster now. But she gives them some books she recommends. They get the books, and then they also have a felt item as well. And it's not the books they actually go in for, it's the book that she recommends that they read, and that's what then changes how they think about things, and that's how they progress in life. And then it all sort of interlinks, like certain characters know certain characters, and it becomes like a full circle, and it's just a brilliant book. It's one I want to reread again. I don't think it'll be long before I do, because it was just such a cozy and read. It was really good, and I like how each chapter was about a person, but then you kind of, oh yeah, they were in that story. not story, like that chapter or that chapter, and I like that for that reason. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Then I finished Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. This book was a hard book as well, because this is the same person who wrote Convenience Store Woman, but I feel like she went deeper into those themes of fitting into society. It's taboo, it's disgusting, it's a tough read. There's things in here that made me disgusted. But if you're doing that as an author, you're doing a good job. If that's what you're aiming for, then you're doing a good job. But not being part of the factory, this babe making factory of basically being in society is what society expects, again, is the theme of this book, but it just pushes that envelope so much further. It's darker, it's not an easy read. It disgusted me, and I'd say I'm not really lightly offended or lightly affected by a book, but yeah, this book, disgusting, taboo, pushes the envelope from Convenience Store Woman. I'm not sure if I read Earthlings first. I'm not sure if I read Convenience Store Woman, but after reading Convenience Store Woman and Earthlings, I can see how much she pushes that envelope, and I want to read more of her novels, and I would reread both of those. As hard as the subjects are in Earthlings, I would still reread it. But I definitely say that I would definitely caution you to look into the themes of the book before you read it, because I'm not sure if it is for everyone, but it is a must read because it is just harrowing. It is a difficult read, but it is harrowing, and I would recommend it. And finally, well, not finally, I've got two more books, but the final novel on the list is The Guest Cat, and that was written by Takashi Haride. I'm not sure how you pronounce again that last name, or I'm sorry about that, but The Guest Cat was a book about a couple, and a cat comes visiting them, and then they kind of start putting things out for the cat, like food and stuff, and then the cat becomes more comfortable and then comes visiting them, and then they become very attached to the cat, and it kind of goes on from there. I don't want to go too much into that because I don't want to spoil anything, but I love dogs. I like cats. I'm not like, oh, I'm a dog lover and no cats. I like cats, but I've not really had this experience with cats coming, getting attached to a cat that comes visiting, because that's never really happened to me. But yeah, it was a nice story. It was just a nice story, really, but quite sad as well in places. But it was just a light read as well. But it was only 140 pages, so it didn't take too long to read. But it was just a nice read. But I feel like if you're a cat lover, I'd probably say it's probably more for you than it was for me. But I enjoyed it, and I think I would reread it. But I feel like because it was so short, I don't know whether I rushed it a bit. But I definitely would reread it down the line. And then finally, I finished a short story collection, which was The Graveyard Companion, which was by Gray and Sean Usher, which is a father and dad writers. They were quite good stories, but they were a bit old-fashioned and a bit not quite, more like scary in a thought-provoking way rather than actually scaring you. But yeah, they're okay. I'm not sure if I'd reread it because it was quite old-fashioned and a bit obvious, but they were okay. But yeah, but that's my May wrap-up. That was quite a lot of books. It's gone on longer than I thought it would. But this is my May wrap up. I'm going to be doing my June TBR once I get another cup of tea and another glass of water. And then I'll upload that as well. So I'll speak to you soon. Bye.